Hi. Let's take a look at file blocking technology first. As you already know a little bit about file blocking technology, in file blocking technology, we try to filter files based on different criteria. For example, it could be the file type, it could be the file extension, or it could be the direction of the file. So based on different criteria, we could filter, or we could actually block the file, either block or allow the file depending upon what action we want to take. So the next generation firewall can either block or generate alarms for specific types of files by identifying the file type. And file blocking blocks the transfer of certain types of files, which would reduce risks of executing malicious codes and viruses on the internal network. So we can block the files from entering our network if those files contain something malicious, and we can also prevent employees from transferring enterprise confidential files to the internet. Similarly, we can block the outgoing files. So as I mentioned earlier, we can block the files based on the direction. So we could block the files that are leaving our network, and we can protect the situation where our employees are trying to transfer some confidential files out to the internet. So this is an example of these two scenarios. Here we have our DMZ where we have an internal server. We can either protect the files that are entering our DMZ to reach this intranet server, this internal server sitting in the DMZ. If the files are malicious, we could block those files. And similarly, if somebody is trying to retrieve some confidential files from this intranet server, we can also block that attempt, and we can also block that file from leaving our DMZ and going to the intranet to a hacker. In the same way, if it's a trust zone, if it's our intranet where we have a trust zone and the employees are sitting there, and if the employees are trying to download some either file that is malicious, that appears to be malicious, we can block that. Or if they are downloading some large video files or some other files which are not work related, and they are wasting their time in non-productive activities, or they are wasting the bandwidth of our network infrastructure, we could block those files so that our infrastructure is not choked because of those unnecessary file downloads. Similarly, if they're trying to upload a file or send a file out to the internet which is confidential, our file blocking technology could block that file so that our data leakage could be prevented and our information could remain confidential and secure. If we look at the basic principles of file blocking, what we do is that we can identify the files based on the applications that those files belong to. For example, the traffic or the protocol that is carrying that file, if it's being carried by HTTP or FTP or SMTP or any of these protocols, we could identify the protocol and stop that protocol from carrying the files. Then we can block the files, or we can check the files or identify the files based on the transfer directions, whether it's the file is being uploaded or downloaded. So we could check only the files that are being downloaded, and we are not checking the files that are being uploaded. So it's up to us. Either we can check the downloaded files or the uploaded files, or both. And then we identify the file type, or first let's take a look at the file extension. We can also check the files based on certain extensions. Let's check the files which have got a .exe or which are executable files, and check those files against certain criteria. Or we could check the .doc files. So based on the extension of the files, all the files that have got that specific extension will be checked for file blocking. And if any of them fall under, after checking, if any of them meet our specific criteria, we can take appropriate action. That is, in certain cases, most of the cases, we could either block the file, or we could alert, generate an alarm or a log. Similarly, the file type. File type is where we do not rely only on the file extension. Even if the extension name is, let's say, .doc, if the extension name is .exe, but it is actually a doc file, it's a Word file, the firewall can detect the file type even if the extension is changed. Still, it can look into the file and see that, okay, this is a document file or this is a .doc file, and it can identify the file based on the file type even if the extension is different. So we can identify the files based on file types and then take appropriate action based on certain criteria, whether we want to block that file or we want to allow that file to go through. So this is a very important and powerful feature in file blocking technology, where we identify the file not only on the extension type but also on the actual file type which is being moved through our network. When we are configuring file blocking on our firewall, there are certain global configurations that we can do, and we can define certain actions for different scenarios of file transfer within our network. This will be clearer when we look at the configurations later on in these videos. However, just to give you an overview, a basic idea, we can define the strategies or we can define the actions in certain cases where the file type is inconsistent with the file name extension. As I said, the name extension could be different from the actual file type. If these two are inconsistent, we could define a global action for the situation. If there is no name extension available and we cannot identify the file type, so when we cannot identify the file type and the name extension is also not available, what do we want to do with those types of files? Or if the file is damaged or malformed, what do we want to do with that file? These and plus a few other criteria, we can define actions against those situations in the global configuration of file blocking. So this will be, as I said, this will be much clearer when we look at the actual configuration for file blocking. How is this file blocking mechanism implemented, or what is the flow of file blocking mechanism? It is important for us to understand the flow of file blocking mechanism. So if we look at the configuration, we have a security policy here. This security policy is going to be checked. First of all, the traffic is checked against the security policy. If the action in the security policy for content filtering is denied, this means that it is not going to be, this file is not going to go through the content filtering process, and the file is simply going to be passed on, or the file is simply going to be allowed to go through the firewall. However, if the action for content filtering is allowed, this means that we want this file to go through the content filtering process. So first of all, the content filtering process is going to identify the application, which application this file belongs to, and then based on the application and the protocol, it is going to do the protocol decoding. It is going to understand the contents of the files based on the protocol to which the file belongs. We will identify the application type, the file data, and the transfer direction. We will identify the files based on that. So once that file type identification has been done, we know what the file exactly is. Then based on that file type, we are going to look at the file blocking techniques, whether we want to block the file or not. And based on the rules that we have configured, or the filtering rules that we have configured, or the configuration file that we have configured, we will decide whether the file needs to be blocked or not. And if the file is compressed, we are going to decompress the file and then go through the identification process and then send it to the file blocking mechanism to, based on rules, we are going to decide whether to block this file or not. And if the file is not going to be blocked, then we are going to forward the file out towards the destination. So this is the process flow of file blocking technology, or how the file blocking technology works within the USG firewall. This flow once again will be clearer when we look at the configuration, because the configuration flow is actually mapped in this process flow, and the process flow and configuration flow are more or less the same. So you'll understand more about this when we look at the configuration flow. So this was the file blocking technology. In the next video, we are going to look at the data filtering technology. So see you in the next video. Hi, in this video, we are going to look at the data filtering technology. As I mentioned earlier, that file blocking is when we are blocking the complete file, or we are not looking into the contents of the file exactly. We simply block the file based on certain criteria, direction, either it could be the direction, it could be the file type, or it could be the file extension. So we could block the file based on that. However, data filtering technology or data filtering mechanism is slightly more complicated. it's slightly different. In data filtering technology, what we are doing is that we are looking at the contents of the file, and we are looking for certain keywords in those contents. If certain or specific keywords that we have already defined are present in that file, then we might want to block that file, because we don't want, if those keywords are identifying certain confidential information in our network, we might want to block that traffic because it is taking out confidential information. So in this way we can prevent the data leakage of confidential information from our network. Just like the file blocking mechanism, the data filtering mechanism is also similar. However, the focus here is not on the complete file itself. The focus here is on the contents of the file, which means that if the file is containing certain keywords which we want to identify, only then we will block the file. The situations where we could want this is we could want to block the confidential content of our files or confidential content from our network going out to the internet, or we want to block the violation content, whatever violation content we have defined. We would want to block that traffic based on that violation content. Similarly, going to our DMZ, similarly, if our employees are trying to send some confidential content out or violation content out, or they are trying to import certain type of traffic or certain type of files which contain non-work related information or which contain any violation content, whichever we have defined, we could block that traffic and we could block that data from entering our network. If you look at the principles of data filtering technologies, the data filtering technology is based on the keywords. We identify the traffic based on keywords, we define the keywords, and then we look at the traffic, and if the traffic contains those keywords, we can filter that traffic effectively using the data filtering technology. There are certain keywords which are predefined, and there are certain keywords which are user defined. So the predefined keywords could be the credit card number, the bank card number, credit card number, social security number, ID card number, secret keyword, etc. These are some of the predefined keywords that are there. We can also define user defined keywords on our own, and if any of the traffic or any of the data contains those keywords, we can take appropriate action. Or we could also identify the content of the traffic or the content of the files that are being exchanged in our network using regular expressions. Regular expressions are a very powerful construct or a very powerful feature which is used for identifying the text or identifying the information in the text. Those of you who are comfortable with programming, with data parsing, either in any of the programming languages, or if you've been network engineers, if you have worked with BGP, you should be familiar with regular expressions. They are a bit cryptic, they are difficult to understand at first, but they are very powerful constructs which are used very frequently in programming as well as in networking. So we'll briefly take a look at what regular expressions are. However, we won't be able to take a detailed look at regular expressions in this course or in these videos. When we are filtering data based on data filtering techniques, we can either generate an alert, which means that we are allowing the traffic to go through, we are transmitting the traffic. However, we are generating a log. We're generating logs for the traffic so that we know that which traffic is passing through our network. We could also block the traffic, which means that we are not allowing the traffic to be transmitted, and we are generating the log as well. We could also operate by weight. This is an interesting concept, which means that we can assign weights to different types of traffic, or we can assign weights to different keywords which we have identified in our network, and as the firewall sees those keywords passing through it, as it sees the traffic having those keywords, it accumulates the weight of each keyword. Each keyword has got a weight, and it keeps accumulating the weight, keeps adding the weight, and if the weight reaches a certain threshold, which we call the alert threshold, it generates a log, it generates an alert, and if it exceeds the block threshold, then it is going to start blocking that traffic. This means that the keywords might be allowed to exist certain number of times till the weight thresholds are either alert thresholds are exceeded or the block thresholds are exceeded. If you look at the regular expressions, as I said, we'll briefly take a look at regular expressions. Regular expressions is in itself a cryptic kind of language which is used for identifying the text. For example, if you're using regular expressions, if you give a dot, this means that it matches any character, including white space or simply space. Brackets means that you are defining a sub-expression. If you give an asterisk, it means that it identifies the zero or multiple repetitions of any character. Plus means one or more repetitions of any characters. And similarly, there are other regular expression constructs or regular expression characters which you can use for text identification, or which you can use for matching the text when you are doing a text parsing. This is the process flow for data filtering technology. This is similar to file blocking technology, almost the same thing. You look at the security policy. According to the security policy, if the action is denied, you don't go through the content filtering, you skip the content filtering or file blocking and data filtering steps. However, if the policy says allow, this means we want to do content filtering, then you identify the application, you do the protocol decoding, you identify the file type, and then you send it to file blocking configuration file or file blocking profile. In between, if the file is compressed, you decompress the file and then you send it back to file blocking depending upon what file is identified after decompression. You send it back to file blocking, and then based on the profile or the rules that we have identified, filtering rules, the file is either decided to be blocked or it is sent to data filtering module. In data filtering, we check against the data filtering rules, the keywords that we have defined, and if it is based on weight, the counter for keyword matching, which means that the weights are being added or accumulated, and if the total counter exceeds the threshold, we can either block that data or we can allow that data to pass through. So this is how we do the data filtering in content security filtering. I hope you now understand what data filtering is. In the next video, we are going to look at different mail filtering technologies. So see you in the next video.